India's astronaut or Gaganyatri, Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla, participated in the Axiom 4 mission, visiting the International Space Station for 18 days. I call the Axiom 4 mission Mission Akash Ganga. He conducted some experiments there. In all, 60 experiments were done as part of the Axiom 4 mission. I have with me Dr. Lucie Low. She is the chief scientist for the Axiom Space, the company which spearheaded Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla's flight from the Kennedy Space Center to the International Space Station and safely back. Thanks a lot for speaking to me, Dr. Lucie.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you, Pallava.
Wonderful. So, how did the Axiom 4 mission go according to the chief scientist? Did the four crew members, three rookies and one veteran, perform to your expectations?
Oh, they more than exceeded my expectations. The AX4 crew were absolutely extraordinary at all of the activities that they undertook. From the science perspective, they had the busiest portfolio that we have had on a mission to date. They had over 60 experiments that they had to take up with them, and covering everything from life sciences to agricultural sciences, plant biology. There were lots and lots of technology demonstrations. There were some physical demonstrations, lots and lots of science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics demonstrations. And the crew were absolutely fantastic. So Peggy, the commander, she's a trained biochemist and biologist. So she always knows what she's doing with science and space. But the rest of the crew were absolutely fantastic. So Suave from Poland had a little bit of an advantage because he's an engineer by training, a nuclear engineer. So he was very familiar with some of the research. But Shooks, as a pilot, did an extraordinary job of learning all of the science, performing it in microgravity, which can be very challenging at times. Things don't necessarily react in the way that you expect them to, and things tend to float away if you're trying to keep hold of them. So he did an absolutely wonderful job of performing all of the experiments, and the crew as a whole did a fantastic job of a really tremendous and successful research portfolio, as well as obviously an overall safe and successful mission.
So, did they complete the 60 experiments you had lined up for them, or did they miss out more, or did they add some more to their portfolio?
So what they were able to do is because so they did complete the full portfolio of research experiments, which was phenomenal because there was so much research taking place that making sure that everything was scheduled and that everything was done in time can be very challenging. But the crew not only performed all of their research objectives, but because there was a slight delay in return to Earth because of some bad weather, the crew got an extra few days and they were actually able to collect more data for some of the experiments while they were up there. So it wasn't so much that they added experiments, but some of the research they were doing, they were able to take additional time points, or they were able to take more pictures, or collect some more data. So they actually ended up coming down with some extra data that was tremendously helpful for some of our researchers.
You're satisfied with their performance?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. I think they did a wonderful job. I'm so grateful for all of their hard work. And I think the researchers that we've worked with across the world are also tremendously grateful for all of their hard work.
And how did Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla, whose call sign is Shooks, perform his experiments? And let's go down one by one on all of them.
Okay, so he performed all of his research objectives absolutely fantastically. So he was working very closely with NASA and some of the NASA partners to make sure that he was trained up for all of the research objectives. So the projects that we're doing on looking at plant sprouting in space, he was able to monitor the sprouting. He was able to see what the plants were doing. He was able to take imagery for some of the muscle regeneration projects work that was taking place, and he did a wonderful job performing all of that research. He did lots and lots of technology demonstrations and STEM demonstrations. So to inspire students across India, he helped explain, for example, how the digestive system works in space, how fluids behave in space, how all kinds of things are very different in space. And so he did an absolutely fantastic job of inspiring an entire continent of young people, I think, who are going to want to be astronauts in future as well.
There is no doubt today. Lots of people want to follow in his footsteps, and I'm sure there'll be many babies in 2025 who will be named Shubhanshus and Shuklas and Shuks, thanks to the great Axiom formation.
And I'm
Was
sure
there?
they will fly in the future.
I'm sure there will be because India has a Gaganyaan program, and these are the first steps for that. And Subhanshu has laid those first baby steps. So it's important that we have a whole bunch of younger folks joining as astronauts in times to come.
Yes.
Were there any surprises in the experiments which astronauts Shukla did?
So I think less so for some of the experiments that Shooks did, because the experiments that he was doing were often a continuation of experiments that had been done previously, but that were adapted for research interests for Indian researchers and for Indian scientists. But I do know that for some of the other experiments that took place from some of the other countries that flew, there were some unexpected um, hurdles, I think, that crew had to overcome to make sure their experiments were successful. And so all this goes to say is that we can think that we will know how microgravity will interact with an experiment, but until you get up there and actually do it, sometimes you just don't know how something's going to work out. It's often the same as if you're doing research in a lab here on Earth. You can have a hypothesis and you can go into the lab and you can test it, and something might be a little bit different or something might not work the way you expect it to. And as on the ground, when you have to go into the lab and troubleshoot and figure out how to move forward, I think there were a few experiments where the crew had to do that in space as well. Obviously, the added difficulty is that without gravity, things tend to float away, or you might not be able to see the same effects that you might see on Earth. So sometimes I think the expected conditions can be quite surprising for some of the researchers that work in microgravity. But the crew all did a phenomenal job of overcoming these hurdles, making sure that they got the research and the data that the researchers here on the ground wanted them to get. And so now the case is that there is so much data that's being analysed by researchers across the world that it's going to take a few months for that data to be analysed, for the results to be understood, and then we'll expect to start seeing those results getting published over the next few months, I think.
So have any of the results come back to you? Because there were some very simple experiments.
So the very simple experiments can often be very complicated because they require a lot of post-flight analysis. And so what this means is that a simple experiment, or what's seen as a simple experiment, might take place, but that might then require months of work in the lab afterwards to actually delve into what those effects are. So there was a beautiful experiment from ISRO that sent some seeds to space. And so that's actually a quite complicated experiment because now there are multiple generations of those seeds that need to be grown that will then help us understand more of some of the genetic changes that might take place in these plants. And so what seems like a simple experiment can often be very complex when it comes to the analysis part. And so in terms of some of the results that we've seen so far, we have been very excited by some of the work that our teams were doing on cancer research in space. We have partners that have flown a project for all 4 of our Axiom missions now, and they've built on work from their cancer research on every mission. And on this last mission that flew, we were very excited to see that the crew were testing an experimental drug that is currently going through the clinical trials process here in the US. They were testing that on cancers in space. And we're seeing some really very exciting preliminary results from that. I'm not going to share more because it's really up to the team to share their data and to share their results when it comes out. But we're very excited about that. We're also very excited about our project that was looking at insulin in space.
Diabetes, yeah.
Exactly. So checking continuous glucose monitors, assessing the impact of spaceflight on insulin pens. And so the team are still busy collecting data on that front. But even already, just during the flight, there were 10,000 data points that were collected during the mission, which is now undergoing a lot of analysis. And there's a lot of data that's currently being investigated to see what was the result from that experiment, how can we move forward, and how can we continue to move towards a place where we can fly an insulin-dependent diabetic astronaut in future. So it's all very exciting.
Diabetes is becoming a big issue in the world, and you will certainly need people who are diabetes, either diabetes free is what you have been trying, but you will need people who have diabetes and also flying there. So chronic diseases, I think that is what ultimately one has to look at. And
Exactly.
whether space microgravity affects aging, those kind of stuff. That is exciting. And I'm sure
That's
that the experiment which was done with twins, one on the ground and one in space, must have yielded amazing results for NASA. Long
yes, I
ago
think
days. Yeah,
so.
that
Yeah,
that was that was an exciting study. Now,
indeed.
of you mentioned about that seed study by ISRO, but that study has been done many times. See, China has been flying loads of those seeds for years to to space and
Yeah.
bringing them back. NASA has also done that. It's just that the seeds are different. Why would you expect much difference in analysis from the seeds which went from India?
Because every type of seed has a different genetic profile, and every way that a plant grows and sprouts and produces seedlings themselves can be a little bit different. So I think it's really important to understand that if you're looking at a future where you're moving towards ambitions to maybe grow plants in space or on the moon or further beyond, Gaganyaan has some really exciting and ambitious goals for its space program, then it's important to understand the implications of what that might have on the seeds that India may want to fly. And so what's this speaks to the entire endeavor of research that's been done in space is that we want to look at how lots of different seeds have been flown in space and the impacts that has, because that not only has implications for future exploration flights, but it also has implications for the work that we can do back down here on Earth. So, for example, you referred to NASA flying seeds previously and China having flown seeds. That may be true, but then if we can understand what the differences are in those responses of the seeds that have flown in space previously and compare them with the results that India will see from this experiment, then what you might actually then be able to see is differential changes between those seeds in their response to spaceflight. And what's really critical here is that then when you start to understand where those differences lay, you can start to then potentially exploit them. So, for example, if you see a change that creates a certain additional level of radiation resistance in one type of seed that was not seen, for example, in any of the seeds that flew from ISRO, then potentially in future what you might be able to adopt is the gene that has that genetic resistance to radiation from one plant and maybe apply it to another plant that has high interest for ISRO to and India to fly in future. So what that means is that you can take the results from all of these experiments and really see how things are different between these seeds and then use that to inform future agricultural purposes and processes both in space and back here on Earth.
Because ISRO have a whole Gaganyaan program where we want to send a human in space, then have an Indian space station, and then land an Indian on the moon by 2040. India wants a permanent presence in space. So, do you think these experiments which India flew, seven of them, which were mostly related to agriculture and food, would they help in contributing towards the enhanced Gaganyaan program which India has, which is very ambitious?
Oh, absolutely. Because everything that India is doing, it's not just necessarily about flying the seeds, it's also about learning the experience of how do you fly an experiment in space? How do you train a fighter pilot to become a scientist in space? How do you learn these processes that enable a nation to live and work successfully in space? So everything that Israel and that India has done with the AX4 mission has been learning those skills, learning that equipment, learning those processes, and this is all tremendously supportive to the Gaganyaan program.
Wonderful. Group Captain Shukla also participated in some experiments on the human body along with NASA. Do you have any details of that?
So we can't talk about which crew took part in human subjects research studies because that data makes the crew member identifiable, which means that it's a violation of their privacy. But what we can do is talk about some of the research that the crew took part in. And so when crew take part in human subjects research, what they're doing is they're volunteering their own bodies as test subjects to see what is the effect of microgravity on the human body, which means that we can try and understand more about cognitive processing. So one of the experiments from India was looking at how the brain responds to screens, displays in space, and how that impacts cognition. And so crew took part in that experiment. Crew also took part in experiments that were taking samples from their bodies, so saliva, tears, urine, etc. And that is helping people understand what are the changes that take place physiologically in the body when someone goes to space. There were projects that were coming from the European Space Agency that were part of a long ongoing study looking at bone health in space. So when the body goes to space, you lose bone density and muscle mass very quickly. And the only way to get over that at the moment is to take part in activity and physical exercise in space. And so ESA wants to understand from long duration missions as well as from short duration missions from crew that take part and offer their data towards this kind of research. It helps not just ESA but the whole world understand how is a short duration mission impacting the body as opposed to a long duration mission. How can we build on data that came from the shuttle missions, which were shorter duration in the 90s and onwards?
Yes.
And what does this tell us about the overall understanding of how the body adapts to space? And so when crew volunteer to take part in these studies, they are offering to be guinea pigs for the rest of the world, essentially, and for all of those future spaceflight participants that we expect will fly in future, because we have to understand how the body adapts to space.
See, not many South Asians have flown to space. We had Rakesh Sharma. We had Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma flying from India to space long ago. We have now Shukla. We have Sunita Williams of part Indian origin and Kalpana Chawla of part Indian origin. Do you think will this add up to a better understanding how humans adapt to microgravity? Because you don't have much data from the Indian genetic pool, as one would say.
Yeah. So the things that are similar between humans are greater than the differences when it goes to going into space and the impact that microgravity has on the human body. What I think is going to be really interesting over the coming years is with the greater number of people that go into space and the greater diversity of people that fly in space, as we mentioned, we referred to wanting to fly people with chronic diseases and chronic health conditions. As we get more data, we're going to be able to better understand how to tailor what we call countermeasures to each individual. So what that means is that it's going to be less important what nationality you are or what ethnicity you are, but it's going to be more important to understand what's your particular genetic predisposition towards a particular disease, or how does your particular pharmacokinetic abilities differ between one person and another, and how then can we best give you some potential drugs or countermeasures that could protect you from some of the more negative impacts of going into space. And so, like I said, what humans are much more similar than they are different. And I think just as we get more humans that fly in space, what this is going to tell us is how we can better tailor keeping each individual healthy and safe in space, as opposed to groups of individuals, because we want everyone who flies in space to be healthy and safe, and also to be efficient and impactful and able to do their work well.
Sure. Now, Group Captain Shukla flew to the International Space Station. The space station is likely to be retired very soon, so you're going to be losing your playground. How do you feel about that?
Well, we don't think of it as a playground to start off with. We see
All
it as
work is play if you enjoy it.
That's very true. That's very true. So I'm sure if you mention to Shooks about whether he enjoyed his playground, he can give you some good. But I mean, we see the important work that goes on up there. So we see this very much as a very busy and active laboratory, which I'm sure everyone has a lot of fun working in as well. But what we are most excited about is that Axiom Space, we're building the next generation space station, which will succeed the ISS. So the idea is that as the ISS reaches its end of life, there will be space stations available that can take over as that hub for humanity to go to in space and to do this work and to have this fun and to explore and to learn and to develop new technologies and to use low Earth orbit as a stepping stone and a testing place for exploration for humanity to go further, which is the whole point of the Gaganyaan program. So we're excited about that.
So how is the Axiom space station coming up?
It's doing well. We've finished our final weld for our first module, which is currently, I think, being shipped to the US, where it'll be outfitted in our Houston, Texas-based factory. We have our launch date set for late 2027. We expect to be launching that first module. We'll be connecting to the International Space Station, and then we'll be building out our space station from that point. So it's a very busy, very exciting time at Axiom. If you were ever to visit our space station development facility in Texas, you might see parts of the space station lying around or trip over them as you walk around and tour the place.
I would I would certainly love to come and take a look at them before they fly into space. And
Absolutely.
it would be ideal. Let's see how we can manage that soon. We couldn't manage because the Shukla mission got postponed again and again and again, and
It did.
we couldn't manage to come for the launch. But that happens. It's after all rocket science.
Rocket science is not easy. So
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Now, if India were to ask for help from you for the Indian space station or for India's Gaganyaan program, would you be willing to contribute?
me personally, absolutely. I'd love to fly. Are you offering? Axiom Space would be delighted to continue to work with Israel and with India and with the Indian nation to help achieve its Gaganyaan ambitions. Everything we are doing is designed to help elevate countries around the world that want to go to space, to take advantage of this incredible environment, and to explore further for humanity and for their national goals. So it's absolutely something that Axiom's tremendously supportive of.
Is there any one experiment you have been wanting to do in the microgravity environment as a scientist yourself and have not been able to do and you would want to do?
I desperately want to take part in some of the stem cell experiments that we've been doing. We've partnered with organizations such as Cedars-Sinai here in the US, which are world-renowned stem cell experts. And we are looking towards manufacturing stem cells in space at a large scale. And this is really important because stem cells have huge clinical promise for understanding diseases and for potentially treating them as well. And so the stem cell work is incredibly important. And we've done some of the first steps where we've demonstrated the proof of concept that we can do certain aspects of the stem cell manufacturing process. But there's a lot of work to do. And I would love to get up there and get into the glove box and get pipetting and look down the microscopes and check that the cells are doing what they're supposed to do, because the stem cell work, I think, could be truly transformational for health back here on Earth, which is what I'm very excited about, is using microgravity to benefit everyone back down here on Earth.
And do you think the space station has lived up to its expectation for the world, having contributed over $150 billion? Has it given back enough to humanity?
More than enough. I think the space station has more than delivered on its promise. It has been an absolute exemplary example, not only of international cooperation, but of understanding ourselves, our science, our technology, our engineering, in a way that is just not possible here on Earth. So it has delivered so much more value than I think you can place a monetary figure on. It has been an outpost for humanity for more than 20 years. And not just an outpost for for one country, but for the whole world. And so as we continue, as Axiom Space continues the remarkable legacy of the International Space Station, we look forward to welcoming new microgravity users and new people who want to fly in space to really harness and utilize that environment. So I think the promise of what the ISS has been more than delivered on, and I'm so excited to see what comes next as countries like India continue to develop their space programs and really show us what is the next future of humanity in terms of what we can do in space.
Because I'm not wrong, the International Space Station has been more about research and development in microgravity. The new commercial stations could be more about manufacturing in microgravity. Is that a fair understanding?
I think it's the space station to date has been very focused on understanding how you do science in space and what we can begin to understand. There's been a huge amount of exploration science that has been done and technology development that has been done on the ISS. I think what you refer to and is very interesting is that commercial companies that are building space stations are also looking at commercializing opportunities to manufacture things in space that you can't make back here on Earth because the physics doesn't allow it. And so I think what that means is that commercial companies, as we move forward with this, have a greater opportunity to embrace all kinds of activities in space that to date there has been less of a focus on. And I think that's just because there's been so much foundational work that has needed to be done to even get to the state where we are now to enable commercialization. So I think, yes, the questions about how the body reacts in space, how technologies can be adapted to space, how plants grow in space, that research will continue to be done. It's not going anywhere just because the ISS is going away. There's still lots and lots of questions. But there's an additional opportunity for thinking, how can we manufacture novel things, or how can we adapt the manufacturing process for things in a way that we could not do here on Earth, that can create better products in space that we can bring back down here to Earth. So I think that's tremendously exciting. And I think that's the cusp of where we stand, is to start capitalizing on that investment there.
Are you excited that sooner than later humanity would be living on the moon and permanently inhabiting it? So microgravity of the moon becoming a permanent home. It's very hostile on the moon.
It's very hostile in low Earth orbit as well. So I think the fact that we can learn so much from living and working in low Earth orbit is a tremendous learning opportunity for how we will adapt that to living and working on the moon. And I think that's a really exciting opportunity for humanity. I think we all need to understand that by living and working in these extreme and hostile environments, we can not only learn about those environments, but we can also learn a lot about how humanity can make the most of the resources that we have and make life better for us all, wherever we're living, whether it's on the moon or back here on Earth or further afield on Mars one day.
Excited about someday humans going to Mars?
I would love to see it happen. I think it's going to happen, and I'm looking forward to when that takes place, and looking forward to hearing about those astronauts' experiences for sure.
One of the motivations for India to have a human space program is to have permanent presence somewhere on indigenous technology. If India or humans were to leave Earth and make a home somewhere. ISRO doesn't talk about that, but deep down, that is one of the philosophical reasons why India wants an indigenous space program, access to space by India on indigenous Indian technology. Do you think it's a fair idea that independent states have more human space program? Because India is going to be the fourth country to have a human space program.
I think any program that enables humans to learn more about how we can advance technology, how we can understand more about microgravity and space and our planet as well, I think that's all beneficial to humanity as a whole.
So overall, you were satisfied with the Axiom for the mission Akash Ganga mission?
It was a fantastic mission. The crew did a phenomenal job. The science is really exciting. We're so proud of them, of all the crew's work, and we're so delighted that our researchers around the world were able to get their results data, their data back, their results back, that they're doing all the analysis, they're learning all of the things that they wanted to learn from the research. And yeah, we can't wait to see the papers and the publications start coming out to tell the world about those research.
What a pleasure learning about the science which was done at the Axiom 4 mission. And hopefully, we will have another Indian going up to space very soon on an Indian rocket from Indian soil, where the countdown will also be Indian and the crew module will be Indian. And hopefully, you may be able to contribute towards that effort sometime soon. Thanks a lot for. Go ahead, ma'am.
I was just going to say it would be an honor to support as that program and those ambitions. It sounds very exciting.
Thanks a lot for speaking to me. It's such a pleasure to learn about the science being done in the microgravity environment. Let's keep in touch, and as and when results come out, we will come back to you to understand more.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Pallava. Very nice to speak to you today.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Lucie Low. So that was Dr. Lucie Low, the chief scientist for the Axiom Space Company in Houston, the company which spearheaded Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla's flight to the International Space Station. In New Delhi, Pallava Bagla for NDTV.